You're on your Feel Good Breakfast Show indeed. And this morning, we told you that, yes, it is all about the great vibes that we can bring you in the morning, but we also always have to have those important conversations. We are within 16 days of activism against gender-based violence in this country, and we are here to have this conversation because we know that abusive relationships can sometimes go on and become a cycle, and victims don't know how to come out of it or get help. And we today are going to be sitting down with two ladies who are here, in fact, to tell us what are the facts as well as what can we do to navigate abusive relationships. So, beautiful Expresso family, please can we welcome to our chairs today. It is none other than Queen Maloban, who is the Gauteng General Manager of Metropolitan, as well as none other than Marisha Singh Naika, who is a therapist and pro-activist at Heartlines and Faith Action to End GBV. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And thank you so much for all of the great work that you're doing, actually. I think that's one of the biggest things. But Marisha, I'm going to start with you, especially because, you know, you've done a lot of work with dealing with a lot of victims in abusive relationships. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, some of the experiences and common signs that people have in terms of trying to downplay what is an abusive relationship?
Thank you, Zanele. So I think often victims themselves or survivors don't even realize that I am in abusive relationships because this is the nature of abuse. Yes. That it makes you believe that there's nothing wrong here. Sure. This is just life. This is the way relationships are supposed to be. And so the criticism that you face, the belittling, the dehumanizing, the words that says you are nothing, you are less than, becomes almost everyday life. And so often victims, you know, don't realize, hey, this is happening to me. I am being abused. And that can be quite harsh, you know, the realization that could it be that I am a victim? And it would mean taking back your power to say, I can have a different life. This relationship, I can end it. It can be different.
And it's not what I deserve.
Absolutely. It's not what I deserve. It's not, I'm worthy of something that is meaningful and healthy. And I do deserve that, so absolutely.
100%. And Queen, I want to talk to you just a little bit about, you know, the power dynamics that sometimes come into play in different relationships. You know, I think a lot of the time people think of abuse and they only think of physical abuse. But of course, we also know that there's emotional, psychological, or even financial. Can you talk to us about those power dynamics?
I think what you're mentioning, Zanele, is very important. You know, we normally think abuse is what we can see, but I think the worst is the emotional abuse that a lot of people suffer. And I think one of the realization I've come to it's that it doesn't choose, you know, whether you're a professional. It's amazing how, it's actually shocking how many of us as professional women actually get to go through that abuse. And I think there's different reasons why people would stay. And the power dynamics a lot of the time involves financial matters, where you find that a woman is dependent on the husband or the partner to take care of her and the children financially. And that becomes a very controlling relationship, whereby when you think about getting out, you're thinking, how am I going to survive? How am I going to be able to take care of my children? And I think that's where, you know, the challenges for many women come through. And some of them, it's because of financial reasons that they find themselves staying in that kind of relationship. And I think, you know, this morning I'd like to say to a lot of women, there's a ways and means you can actually get yourself out of that situation. But it's important to sort of like craft a financial plan to say, if I live here, you know, what does it mean for me, for my children financially? What are the things that I need to look at changing? How do I downgrade my life if it requires that? Do I have a savings plan? And I think if you do not, then you have to make sure that you start planning. And you actually start saving money towards, you know, your end goal in terms of when I live here, what it is that I want to build for myself and my children, and how am I going to go about it. So you might want to have your secret, you know, I always say it's a secret savings account, whether it's a tax-free account. And funny enough, most people don't know that, you know, you find sometimes that employers actually allow employees to actually put money aside, that you even get a different payslip for that, so that nobody can actually know that you're actually putting money aside.
That's beautiful. And I was actually going to say, I think one of the things I'm very grateful for, especially with us having these conversations, is actually coming to realize what are the measures that are in place where we can get help. You know, even if you speak to your bank or whatever it may be. And I think we're going to touch on that a little bit more in a bit, Queen. But Marisha, I want to come to you because we all know about Stockholm Syndrome. And of course, you know, this is something that develops in relationships. Can you talk to us a little bit about how it is that it actually develops in relationships and how one is able to possibly overcome it?
Okay, so Stockholm Syndrome was initially formulated or seen between a relationship between a kidnapper or captor and the person that has been kidnapped.
Yes.
And then it's now been transformed to abusive relationships as well.
Yes.
Where the victim or the survivor develops feelings or wanting to protect, wanting to take care of, because of the trauma bonding that happens in that situation. So they would even validate and defend the abuser. And that happens because, again, of the trauma that is happening, but they bond over the trauma.
That is so scary. And especially to think of how it becomes a cycle, sadly, a lot of the time. But I do also know that, you know, there are ways to get out of it. And I think that's what's the most important thing, you know, knowing that there is help there. But one of the most difficult things that a lot of people find, you know, in terms of trying to move out of an abusive relationship is, just like you mentioned, the finances. So what are the options that people are able to look at exactly, Queen, when it comes to that?
I think it's very important to do a proper financial plan, whether you do it with your financial advisor or you do it with a financial planner.
Yes.
But I think once you realize that you're ready to make that move, is to look at what is my income, what are my expenses, how much money can I put away? You know, when I move out, where am I going to stay with my children? Or where am I going to move into? And I think a lot of the time people suffer a lot of societal pressure in terms of, I need to keep up with this lifestyle.
Yes.
But also it's realizing that is the lifestyle worth your life? It's the lifestyle worth your well-being.
And those
you
are
know,
the
and
questions
actually
we need to
making sure that
ask.
you put those plans. And you need to also look at, if you have, you know, policies in place, you have financial, you know, means in place. For example, one of the things that we normally don't look at is, do I have a life cover, for example? Who are the beneficiaries of my life cover?
Yes.
And a lot of people we know culturally in black families, a lot of people are married in community of property. And I think when you get out of a relationship, you need to realize that, what happens if something happens to me? You know, will this man be able to look after my children? And how is it that I'm able to protect what I have, but also making sure that I protect my children?
100%.
You know.
And Queen, these are the questions that I think I'm so glad we are actually asking this morning, and we're able to also answer them. And ladies, thank you once again for the incredible work that you're doing at the moment. I think that this is exactly what we need to be able to hopefully one day end the pandemic that is gender-based violence in this country. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do not go anywhere, Expresso family, because these conversations are what we are getting into. And of course, it's going to be continuing soon enough as well. Right about now, we actually want to hear from you, because we asked you, what more can South Africans do to hopefully end gender-based violence in our country? And Ewan is standing by with those answers. Ewan, tell us what's happening, my friend.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show on this Tuesday. And as we mark the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we recognize the urgent need to address this pervasive problem of domestic abuse. It happens far too frequently. Abusive relationships can have rather long-lasting effects on both partners and children, specifically causing emotional trauma. Now, this morning, Reverend Vuyani Bue, also known as the Love Pastor, is a counselor, marriage officer, and a motivational speaker. And he is here this morning as we dive deeper into this discussion. It's lovely to have you, Reverend. Thank you very much. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
For your little pearls of wisdom
great
this
to be
morning.
here.
Yeah. Look, I know that you work very hard in this particular space, and we had a little bit of a conversation earlier. I mean, it's just mind-blowing how frequently this happens very close to us, and oftentimes we don't even know about it. And we said speak out. I mean, that is the first step, but it's hard, I think, for people in those particular situations to go about speaking out. So I guess the goal here is to ultimately prevent. an abusive relationship, I think even more so under younger generations.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we approach it?
As you said, prevention. The most important thing you can do about abuse is to be able to identify it even before it gets close. There are certain telltale signs, that will always expose themselves about an abuser, because leaving is the later part, but identifying is the most important part. One, an abuser, I've coined this term that they specialize in fascination before assassination.
Fascination before assassination.
Fascination before assassination. He smothers you with love. Everything revolves around you, but at the very same time, he takes you away from your family, takes you away from your comfort zone, takes you away from your protection. You cannot have an opinion. Everything is about him. What he wants goes, no matter you agree or you don't agree. And it's always that, you have to be separated. In the meantime, while he smothers you with love, you are being separated, you are being sort of psychologically conditioned.
Oh, and it happens so slowly that you don't almost realize it.
Yes, and it always manifests in loving loudly. The bigger
everyone
messaging,
can see.
the bigger messaging is that I love you, and it will be gifts. Everybody will see that this guy has fallen head over heels with you. And this is the message that will sit outside while you are being assassinated on the inside. This is the fascination I am talking about.
Yeah.
So he creates this facade, that you are the happiest girl ever. In fact, he is God's gift to you. But on the inside, you have been psychologically separated. You have been given the impression, that if I keep him happy, then everything will be fine.
Sure.
And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth.
No, and you lose yourself in that process. And I guess it's also one of the reasons why it's so difficult to take that step and say something, because you are in the scenario. I mean, how do you even approach it? I think misconceptions around an abusive relationship, what are those? What are you seeing in your field when it comes to those? And for us to understand, for people that really want to step out and help, what are some of those misconceptions so we can recognize what's going on?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that if a person looks happy and they look as if everything, is okay, it never is. You always have to look deeper because the signs are very subtle. They're very subtle. When people are secluded, when a wife or a partner is not even allowed to greet neighbors, when the children should not socialize, when everything about this person is controlled and they seldom come out of their shell, that is a sign that person could be in an abusive relationship.
I see.
And whatever is love related, it is always publicized for everyone to see, But this person never comes out, and you never really get to experience who they are, who that person they are, and they're always, living in fear of their partner. They may not say anything, but you could the body language when the partner is around tells you that this person is uncomfortable. How can you be uncomfortable with the person that you love?
Exactly, and this is why it's important to have periods like this, like 16 days of activism, so we can hear from experts in the field. We do have some comments as well that we quickly want to run through on social media, what we've asked you here. We have Annie saying, what is she saying? She is a domineering, controlling spirit is a red flag. When that surfaces, it is evidence of abuse within the family unit. So there we have it. Just a quick part. You can go read that entire comment on social media as well. We have another one as well for you from Toe. Good morning, Toe. It says anger outburst, alcohol and drug abuse, isolation, self-withdrawal, self-neglection, aggression, crying without an apparent reason. So those kind of signs you would also attribute to somebody that is in an abusive relationship.
Exactly.
So there's definitely a lot, and I can see that there's a lot of education out there already, but I see some of our previous comments that came through, something that you spoke to me is building a center, giving somebody a safe space, and this is where you come in and a little bit about your work.
This is what we do as part of Elite Labantu, an NGO that is based in Guguletu. We have a safe house. You know, I won't mention where it is, but we are able to rescue women in these abusive situations where they do not have anywhere to go. You know, then we're able to put them in that safe house. You know, if they don't have any skill, there is some training that we put them through so that they can be able to earn money, you know, on their own. They get taught how to do nails, how to do, you know, a crash course in beautician. Then when they've gotten the certificate, they're able to start something on their own, because most of the times an abuser will prohibit you from earning your own income, because that provision that seems to be steeped in love, it is actually a controlling mechanism. You don't earn, you don't do anything. I provide for you. I am your life. I am your center. I am in control. I will dictate your coming and going, you know. But at the very same time, you know, I will do everything for you, because the abuser is a sick person. Inside the abuser's mind and heart is a very, very abused and afraid little boy.
Look, there's a lot still that needs to be said, and I know that over the next coming days we will unpack it as well. So thank you very much, Reverend. I think the most important part as well, not only speaking out on the person that's being abused side, but that the abuser or the perpetrators are held accountable. And this is where us as the public come involved. If you see something, if you hear something, don't just stand, you know, act and get involved and make sure that those are held accountable. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and your insight this morning. I mean, that's all from our relationship talk for this morning, but please make sure to check up and support your loved ones and reach out for help if you need it. We'll see you all again next week with relationship advice and discussions on very, very important topics.